I still have Muranga Senator Irungu Kang'ata and the Nairobi City Water and Sewerage Company Managing Director, Engineer Nahashan Muguna. Gentlemen, thank you for sticking with us throughout the entire bulletin. I'll start with come back to you to just state your position on this particular issue. A lot has been said. Every leader seems to be weighing in. As a senator for the county, are you in support with what the governor of the county is doing or saying?
Personally, I'm opposed to the methodology that the governor is applying to fight for this issue. I don't support demonstrations, I don't support fights, I don't support chaos. So to that extent, I'm disagreeing with the methodology that has been adopted by the governor. However, I am in support of the whole goal, the whole idea of Muranga obtaining something out of the water that goes to Nairobi, and for several reasons. Number one, when you look at fourth schedule of the Constitution, part 2, it provides that water and sanitation is a devolved function. So meaning the county assembly of Muranga or even the county government has absolutely every right to come up with ideas on how it can harness that resource which is in Muranga County. That may include, one, coming up with a law that would provide a charge against anyone getting water from Muranga, or alternatively, coming up with a budget which can as well impose any tax or any cess in respect to that water. I would imagine there are several other cess or charges which are chargeable by the county in respect to so many other resources, for instance, sand, for instance, any other resource. So to pursuant to that right that is vested on the county assembly to levy charges. I belong to the school of thought. The county government of Muranga can as well pursue for some charges in respect to that resource which is in Muranga County. Number two, when you look at the Water Act of 2016, Section 132 provides that obstruction charges can be levied so that you protect the environment. Currently, that money goes to a national government entity that is called WARMA. I've never seen anything that is being done in Muranga County by WARMA to protect the environment. So I belong to the school of thought that we need alternatively to go after obstruction fees. The county gets that money and we ensure that we are able to do something to benefit our people.
This has definitely not gone down well with so many people, especially those from the county of Nairobi, who are the biggest consumers of the water, as you say, that comes from Muranga.
Well, yes, it is true, but incidentally, I think they are not being objective. I strongly believe if Nairobians were to become more objective, they would support our cause, and for obvious reasons. I am going to give you 3 reasons why Nairobians and also people of Muranga should merge on this issue. Number one, Muranga need to do a lot of reforestation. For the last several years, that region has not been receiving adequate rain. Recall the other day when we had long rains, it took so many months for Dakini dams to fill up. So meaning it is to the interest of Nairobians to ensure we do a lot of reforestation in Abadeas. How do we do reforestation as a county without getting some money for that? Number two, you expect the people of Muranga not to go into that forest and get, for instance, cut trees for energy. Recall that the entire region that adjoins that forest has a lot of economic activities, in particular tea plantations. We have about 10 tea factories. For a very long time, those tea factories were using wood energy to process the tea leaves. But pursuant to a certain government order, we are no longer harnessing that resource to burn our tea leaves. So we are compelled to use alternative and more expensive sources of energy. So to compensate for that, it makes all the sense for the people of Nairobi to consider giving Muranga County something so that that burden that we are carrying on behalf of Nairobians can be compensated and that resource becomes something sustainable.
You have described this already as what the governor is saying as empty talk. I'll just let you quickly react to what the senator is saying, giving reason as to why he thinks this is very viable, especially for the people of Muranga.
Now, what the senator is talking about is environmental protection. Now, when you look at the laws which exist in the country, it's true environmental protection is a devolved function. But the water resource is a national resource. the revenue we charge, or the fee we charge to water, we don't sell the water. We actually charge for the service we do to the water to make it potable. Otherwise, there is nothing. We don't charge for even the assets developments. The assets are developed by the national government, the major assets. The rest of the money which we generate from the water is just to make it potable for it to be used by a human. Otherwise, we don't make any major the money people are thinking we are making a lot of money out of the water. We don't trade with the water. We only charge a levy for what we have done to the water to make it potable, and then money for maintaining the infrastructures. So if we were to charge other costs on the water to be plowed back to the Muranga people or to any other county where water is being drawn for use by other counties, it will be making the economy suffer, because water is one of the factors which are used in calculation of inflation index. The water costs, transport costs, basic food costs, they are the parameters which are used for calculating the inflation factors. Now, water again is used in all the industries. Water is used in even steel industries for quenching the steel, building steel. So if you are to increase the cost of water, because all the cost you are talking about will be passed to the people, it implies there will be mega inflation in the country. Again, the conservation of the forest you are talking about, it is done by the Forest Service. There is a national body responsible for conservation of the forest, which is mandated to operate the land and land the forest as an enterprise. So the money they get from selling of the trees, they are supposed to plow back to maintain the forest, because the water comes from Aberdare forest. So now it doesn't come from Kambiti or from Mwangi Wa Iria. The water comes from the forest. The water we harvest is actually flood water from Aberdare forest. It's what we harvest, we store it in the land we bought, it comes through the public land, and again we also pay a fee to the national government for abstracting that water, but it's minimum fee 5 cents per cubic meters to enable the land, the organizations or Waroma which you spoke about, mandated to maintain the riparian land. Just that. So we cannot add more fees on the water. It will become very expensive. It will increase inflation in the country. It's a natural resource mandated to be apportioned by the national government. It's a basic human right,
even basic human right.
So you can't make it more expensive than it is today. So what the governor of Muranga is talking about, that asset is not even for him to manage it. It's the national government to manage it, not him. Because it's not in his land. His land is community land. Public land, community land, mandated to be managed by the county government.
So then what are you saying? There is a blur or a grey area on the roles of the national government as far as water is concerned and the role of the county government? Because we know that it's a devolved function. So do you think there's a grey area as far as this is concerned?
The way the water is managed in the country is the county governments are supposed to provide the service and the development of the infrastructures to provide that service. That's the way the law is. The management of water is a national business or a national activity based on Article 62 of the Constitution. So the national government apportions that water to various organizations or various bodies which want to use that water. Now, like any county, I will apply to Aroma for apportionment. Okay? So the national government is responsible for how that water is managed. But now for the provision of the service itself, the county. It's not the management of the water per se. No. It's actually the use of that water.
Yes, Senator.
Yes, it is true. I want to concede that it is not to our own interest as people of Muranga that would want to add more cost on the consumer. I think that, to me, I agree, I concede. But on the other hand, it's to your own interest as a person who is living in Nairobi to ensure water continue flowing in Nairobi. There is a great danger that if you don't put any resource towards protecting that forest, I can tell you within the next 5 years, we are going to have a major water wars between Nairobians and maybe the people of Muranga. Why? Because you need to invest money to ensure that resource continue flowing. By the way, compare oil with water in Muranga. The people of Turkana are being compensated for their oil, whereas they don't put anything towards its production. The people of Narok are being paid millions of money, whereas they don't do anything to ensure that resource continues to be produced. But the people of Muranga, they do have burdens. And if you don't want to assist us, it is not to your own interest. One, you need us to do a lot of afforestation. Two, you must also ensure, by the way, the people of Muranga practice good farming methods so that we don't allow what is called siltation. You don't allow, as we do something wrong, oil moves from our farms into the Kaine Dam or even any other adjoining farms, all tributaries, and then you end up having dry belts. So you have to look from a futuristic point of view. And to me, all those costs of ensuring that resource continues to give good service to Nairobians, in my own opinion, calls for the people of Nairobi to consider supporting the people of Muranga.
This comes at a time when the governor is seen to be in a vicious political cycle, so to speak, for lack of a better word, with the Muranga Water and Sewerage Company, MWASCO. This is something that has even gone to court. The governor has been blamed of meddling with the business of MWASCO. I mean, is this political?
Well, I don't want to speak on his behalf. I wish that question was directed to him.
But from where you sit, do you think politics has been embroiled in this entire course, like you say? You think it is?
Well, I want
it is necessary for the people of Muranga.
Yes, the point I can only comment for now is that I won't reiterate. I don't agree with the way maybe my colleague Mr. Mwangi Wa Iria is approaching this issue. I don't belong to the school of thought we need to politicize the matter. In fact, by the way, we belong to the government called Jubilee. We need to ensure that the president's second term is quite peaceful. So to that extent, I wouldn't want personally to adopt his confrontational stance or even radical public pronouncements, which in my own opinion may upset the government. Remember, there's a way we can approach this issue, and then we have several other countries having a lot of problems. So to that extent, I wouldn't want to take his methodology. But be that as it may, I am on record prior to his statements personally calling upon Nairobians to consider giving us some money for their own benefit. Not because of our own benefits per se, but you need to sit down as a county in Nairobi. You think, yes, how do we conserve that Aberdare forest? That costs for money, and that cost should not be borne by the
So are we saying this levy that we would be charged as Nairobians would majorly go towards conserving?
Yes, indeed. And yes, indeed. Look here, when you look at the Constitution, it talks about environmental protection. So many clauses talks of environmental protection. The question is, who is going to bear that cost? Surely it is not us, the people of Muranga. We should not bear that cost. We can only bear it to the extent of whatever percentage of water we are abstracting from that region.
All right.
To that extent, I agree. But insofar as the vast majority of the water in that region is being channeled to Nairobi, they should also agree to share that burden. That is the bottom line. The only other major point of departure I have with my governor is I'm proposing with legal means. And there are several tools which the county assembly has that power. And finally, before my colleague steps in, there are two issues which are happening in Muranga. The so-called agitation for payment in respect to the water from Dakine to Nairobi, and the conflict between the governor and MWASCO. To me, we should not conflate issues. Those are
so do you think they're very separate issues?
Yes, they are.
You do not think they have a connection at all?
Unless people are trying to connect it for political purposes. I know some people are somehow crafty. They may want to connect them. And to me, it's unfair. We should address each issue separately.
Separately.
Yes.
I'll let you react to some of the things he's talked about.
Now, when we come to conservation, as he quoted Section 132 of the Water Act 2016, it is true there is a levy which Nairobi City Water and Storage Company pays the national government, because that water belongs to the national government. We cannot be charged twice for abstracting the water. We are abstracting and paying the owner. The owner is the national government. And when you look at Ndakaine is just a storage for flood water. If we don't store that water there, so just go to Mombasa or to the ocean. Okay? So nobody should see the perspective of investing in Muranga, that we are coming to deprive people of water. Muranga, if they want, because when it rains, when Chania has water or Thika River has water, most of the water goes to the ocean. We should plan of how to put other dams, so that we can harness that water which goes to the ocean. Not to fight of whatever somebody else has come and planned for. Because I find it very simplistic the way the government is thinking that Ndakaine is what is depriving of water. The water which goes to the ocean, when does it get the one which goes to the ocean? He has the ability to do a dam to get that water which goes to the ocean, just like the way Nairobi came. I know very well, you know, that under the Constitution, I think Article either 40 or somewhere, it talks about everybody can go, anybody can go and invest anywhere. You can own property anywhere, so long as you buy that land, so that you can do what you want there. That's what exactly we have done in Muranga. We have gone and bought the land from the people, and we are harnessing the flood water, then bringing it to Nairobi to serve province service. Now again, after we have done that, then you come and say we are depriving you of the resource. No, that's not right. Now again, actually in those areas, out of the 3,200 employees, 1,440, they are from where we harness that water. So we provide employment just like any other industry which goes and set up a factory in Meru, in Kiambu, or in Muranga. Okay? What it provides there is employment. Then the community benefits out of that. You can imagine 50% of the employees are from Muranga, Kiambu, and Nyandarua, where we harvest the water for Nairobi. It's not people from other communities who have gone and gotten employed there.
Which brings me to my question. Senator, will we not be setting a precedence even for other counties that if this resource is coming from our county, then let's share the burden, like you talk about Muranga and Nairobi? Because I've seen even on social media, some ask that part of Aberdare Forest is in Nyeri. So what if Nyeri County also says, okay, we also want a levy because this water to some extent comes from us? Are we not setting a precedence here?
Can I define the question? It comes from us. It doesn't come from them.
The question comes from
the
you?
Water comes from Aberdare, which is a national...
Well, let's let him respond to that first.
One, when you talk of county boundaries, they are clearly demarcated. There are records which shows the boundary of Muranga County into that forest. And when you look at that boundary, it clearly shows that the vast region of that forest falls under the jurisdiction of Muranga County. So therefore, we have the right, in my own opinion, to put or to assert any right in respect to any resource that is being harnessed there. Number two, yes, incidentally, I belong to the school of thought. Every county which is receiving water must think about the county or the region where that water is coming from. Not only Muranga, incidentally, the people of Mombasa must think how to protect the resource which is in Taita Taveta. The people in Eldoret should think of how to conserve the forest which is in Marakwet. It makes all the sense, because if you fail to do so, you are going to have a situation where that resource is going to evaporate. And Ndakaine has illustrated that. For the last several years, we have had problems where there's no rain, and we must, as well as a nation, think of how to conserve those regions, particularly putting more resources into that region, and also ensuring the people who are joining that region have some benefits. Otherwise, they may do things which may as well negate the entire resource. So
you would encourage all these counties to Turkana with oil?
Well, the question should be, in my own opinion, probably we need to sit down and come up with a uniform policy so that you don't unravel things. Yeah. And number two, I wouldn't support probably we take that money into another county coffers. I am proposing you direct that money to the adjoining communities. If you're talking about environmental protections, you channel them through women groups, youth groups. That way it suits both the receiving county and also the originating county. Now, there is a question he has talked about that they have offered employment to the people of Muranga. Yes. That's okay, but that is what is called tokenism, where you get a lot of things out of another person, but then you give him some few bones here and there. To me...
Is that what Nairobians are doing to
yes,
people
of course, no doubt about it. When you talk of 500 people you have employed into that place, 40. Well, even if it's 2,000, well, even if it's 2,000 or 3,000, compare the burden. Almost 2 million residents of Muranga are shouldering on behalf of the Nairobians. To me, that is not enough recompense. Be that as it may, also look from this also other angle. He has agreed, and he has given a very good analogy that Dakaine is like a person or an entity opening up a business. A business. I agree. When you come to Nairobi here, when you try to put up in a business, you have to pay for single business permits. You have to pay for so many other levies to the county government. So to that extent also, I belong to the school of thought, the county government of Muranga has every right to come up with any other charge that it may want to impose upon any person who is doing business in Muranga, including the Nairobi County government. Okay. And finally, on that score, and I want to reiterate, it is the Assembly which has that power. Why? Look at the Constitution. Fourth schedule. What are the functions of a county government? Water and sanitation is a devolved function. I agree there's an element of shared function when it comes to water, but the key function has been given to the county. Right. And to comment finally, yes. Him, and he should confirm. He reports to who? To the county government in Nairobi. He doesn't report to the national government.
That's
True or false?
Yes. So let me also clarify some issues.
All right.
You see here, what the senator is refusing to acknowledge, this town, the people who takes with the water, they are from the same place where the water is coming from. They come from Muranga, Kiambu. Actually, they're the ones who put a lot of pressure on the systems here so that we can get more water from there. So I don't know why you want to tax yourself again. Because you are the same consumers of this water. Properties in this town, you are the owners of these properties.
Just the sentiments that have been relayed today by the governor as well.
All these properties, they are the consumers of our water. So when you say you don't want the water to come to Nairobi, you are saying, I want to have a cake and eat it. Huh?
I know the people, the Muranga in diaspora, but they have no problem with supporting.
The aspect which is being blocked, that the water should not come to Nairobi, that's not the right way to approach these things.
What would it mean? What would it mean for Nairobians if, hypothetically speaking, this fell through, this went through? What would it mean for Nowasco? What would it mean for residents in the city?
Why I know very well what he is also saying is not light. He knows very well county registrations are junior to the national registrations. So you cannot impose taxes or levies which have already been imposed by the national government under the Water Act 2016. So the national registrations are superior to the county registrations.
Just counter that quickly, then we'll get back for him to just finish his... Counter that.
Well, it depends on what functions you're dealing with. When you're dealing with a fully devolved function, the county legislation takes precedence over any other legislation. It depends on what you're talking about. So in this instance, we're talking about water and sanitation. In my own opinion, and I would want an interpretation of the High Court, a county legislation is supreme.
You see, again, to hand to what he is talking about, water is a regulated business or activity. Water service provision is regulated by the national government. It's not the counties which regulate it. So levies which are levied by water service providers, they are regulated by the national government. Because as you said, and when you read for the schedule, it's a shared responsibility. There is the activity which the national government is supposed to maintain and manage on water matters. The activities which are supposed to be managed by the counties. Now, as I enumerated you, and as Article 62, Section 3 of the Constitution, water is the responsibility of the national government to manage water. It's not the responsibility of the counties. Right. The county's responsibility is just to provide the service.
Okay, I want your closing comments. We're just about to wrap it up quickly.
Now, my comment is I think these issues of politicizing the water service provision should end. Water is a trans-county resource which moves from one county to another county. And there is no county which can purport it owns the water. That's why the Constitution has written the rivers belong to the national government. Because the country is one. There is no state called Muranga. There is no state called Nairobi. There is no state called Meru or Kisumu. It's a unitary government. So the Constitution has written water to be a resource which will be managed from the source to the ocean, passing through several counties.
Okay, Senator, closing comments.
Yes, I concede we should not politicize this matter. I also concede we belong to the government. We must support the agenda of His Excellency President Uhuru Kenyatta. And therefore, those of us who are in government, particularly those of us who come from Jubilee-leaning regions, we should not be the first one to be seen as if we want to unravel things or bring chaos. Be that as it may, I belong to the school of thought that it is the interest of Nairobians to put some resources towards the conservation of that region. And that can be done through providing a levy. Failure to that, you are going to lose, Muranga is going to lose. So therefore, it is your own interest to support the idea. However, I propose arbitration, I propose negotiations, and to me, I would want Governor Sonko to come to myself or even any other person. We have a very good negotiation.
Is this something you're going to champion for as a senator for Muranga?
Of course. Today I made a statement before the Senate. I called upon for negotiations, not fighting, not fracas. I want us to have a negotiated settlement of the dispute. However, it makes the sense. It's your own interest to support the conservation efforts up there.
Okay, it's a conversation we'll definitely have some other time. Gentlemen, thank you very much for joining us here tonight to just put perspective, especially on this particular case, because there's a lot of talk. Leaders are weighing in on the issue. We'll be seeing how it goes. We know the governor has been summoned by the Senate Committee on Lands, Environment and Natural Resources. So it's something that we will be closely and keenly following up on here on KTN News. My guest tonight, Engineer Nahashan Muguna, is the Managing Director of the Nairobi City Water and Storage Company, and Senator Irungu Kangata, the senator for the county of Muranga, who's proposing definitely a shared burden on this between Nairobi and Muranga. Gentlemen, a pleasure to have you here tonight. And